Weekend Football Podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Hussey, joined, as always, by Adrian Clarke and Mark O'Haire. Adrian, are you in good form? Arsenal back on track with a good win against Seville. Looks like they'll be qualifying out of the Champions League. Arsenal are back in the Champions League, and we don't get to talk about them this week because Mark didn't pick Arsenal and Sheffield United in the running.
Well, we're talking about them already, aren't we? We're barely 30 seconds into the show.
I'm always happy to talk about Arsenal, especially after they just produced a good win. It was impressive, I thought, against Sevilla. Really pleased with the performance. Great to see Gabriel Jesus sparkle in the way that he did. Just hope that injury isn't too serious and that he'll either play at the weekend or be back soon.
Yeah, Mark, let's make things fair. Well, we can talk about QPR, but we can also get into them later on. So off you go, Mark. Any takeaways from the week?
Good question. Any takeaways from the week? It was Newcastle obviously blew my best bet out of the away on the Champions League podcast, and it was kind of chalk and cheese really compared to what we saw against PSG. I thought Dortmund were very impressive. In fairness, Newcastle went at it, and Dortmund produced their best performance this season by a country mile, really, fully deserving of the points and possibly deserved to win by a slightly wider margin. I know Newcastle hit the woodwork twice, but that first half from Dortmund, those opportunities on the break and some fantastic saves from Nick Pope, it's really opened this group up. It was the group of death from the outset, and it really is set up and poised brilliantly at the midway stage. So, it's a tricky task now for Newcastle. They've got 2 away games in the final 3 fixtures, and suddenly from being a really strong position of promise, that they could be sort of looking over their shoulders.
Of course, going to PSG as well, which won't be easy. So fascinating group that is. We're going to get into 4 games and interesting fixtures, given there's a lot of Sunday loaded due to European commitments. We're going to cover Crystal Palace versus Tottenham, Bournemouth versus Burnley. We're going for Wolves versus Newcastle, and the Manchester Derby is last. So if you do want to cover the Manchester Derby first, hit those timestamps in the description wherever you're listening. And if you are listening on a podcast, for example, we'd really appreciate a 5-star review. It takes 2 seconds, means the absolute world to us. And hit that like button on YouTube and subscribe completely for free. The best way to keep up to date with the Matchbook YouTube channel. So we'll start with Friday Night Football, Crystal Palace versus Tottenham Hotspur, and take a look at the betting that we currently have on matchbook.com. You can back Crystal Palace 4.6 here, Tottenham 1.87. The draw is 4.0. Both teams to score yes is 1.75. The Asian handicap line, Crystal Palace are getting a 3/4 goal head start, and the goal line is 2.5. The over at 182. So, Adrian, let's talk a little bit about Tottenham. He is Ange Postecoglou it's got the best start of all time as a Premier League manager, which is absolutely crazy and insane, considering you would think him, out of nearly every manager coming in over the last few years, would have had a lot of teething problems starting. They've had the fixtures. They're coming into a tough run of fixtures. So this is probably their last opportunity to get a win. But if they do win, they're going to go 5 points clear at the Premier League table.
They look great. I can't criticise them at all. I think they've looked fantastic. Watched the game against Fulham. Just so confident. The quality of the football was great to watch. Maddison is just on fire at the moment. He is loving life, super confident. Him and Son look a good combo. I love the centre halves. Romero and Van der Ven are excellent. Yeah, just everything is working. But there is a caveat, and the caveat is that 6 of their 9 games have been against teams in the bottom 8 of the table. So they've had a very, very kind start in terms of the fixture list, but they've made the most of it. Obviously, the win against Liverpool has an asterisk against it. So they were good against Arsenal. So it's hard to find fault with them at the moment. They must be absolutely delighted. And yeah, they've coped amazingly without Harry Kane, obviously, with Son switching into the centre. That was a smart move. I think Ange recognised pretty early doors he couldn't rely on Richarlison to be the number 9, so he's just shunted him to the wide area. He could well be replaced by Brennan Johnson, who's fit again now this weekend. And I was just looking at some of the individual numbers ahead of the weekend, and Spurs have been quite an uncreative side, I would suggest. I don't think that's a stretch. I don't think that's fueled by any Arsenal bias, but they've been pretty bland and uncreative in recent seasons. Well, 3 of the top 6 chance creators in the Premier League this season play for Tottenham. It's an amazing turnaround. The front 3 are all up there among the division's best. So yeah, look, in this game, they're worthy favourites, obviously. They have a very good record against Crystal Palace going back a long, long time. I think they've got a 61% win ratio against the Eagles in the Premier League. Roy Hodgson has a very, very bad record against Tottenham Hotspur. I believe he's only won 1 of 20 Premier League matches against them down the years, which is not great as they head into this one. So, yeah, no, it's going to be an interesting game. Looking at what sort of bet to go with, you would fancy Spurs, but they're quite short of the price. Palace away is tricky. So I preferred the goals angle, preferred to envision a tighter game here. It goes against, obviously, Spurs' great creativity, but if there is a team that can get in amongst them and make it more difficult, it might be Palace. I think that the two centre-halves have been great, Anderson and Gurhey. They've got two really powerful central midfielders in there, in Doucouré and Jefferson Lerma, that might try and knock Maddison and co around a little bit. And up front, they've got a lot of pace and power. So I think they're gonna be quite direct and aggressive in the game, Crystal Palace, and they'll make it scrappy. And a scrappy game is normally a low-scoring game. They need to respond from the defeat against Newcastle. And yeah, I just think, look at Palace's home games this season. You know, one of the 4 has gone over 2.5, so 3 or 4 have gone unders. Palace matches in general average 2, which is the lowest in the Premier League this season. And I just think this is going to be a grind. I can see, if Spurs win, I can see it only really being a 1 or 2-0. But I can equally see a low-scoring draw or even a narrow Palace victory. So, yeah, I'm going to go with under 2.5 goals here, which is at a lovely backable price of 2.16.
Okay, 2.16 for Adrian. And Mark, over to you. And again, a little bit on Spurs focus here. Jamie Carragher described James Maddison as the most influential player in the Premier League this season. And looking at the market, and we talked about their title odds a couple of weeks ago, 14.0. I'm bringing that up just to show you that the market suggests that what Tottenham are producing at the moment is for real.
Yeah, but probably not completely kind of believing the fact that they can sustain this over a longer period of time. And I think how Adrian started the conversation by talking about the soft schedule has to be sort of taken into account here. No one's denying what Tottenham have done in this short period of time under Postecoglou is anything but exceptional, especially with the Harry Kane departure. But it has to be balanced out by the fact that they haven't been tested consistently by strong Premier League opposition right now. And there will be a time when they go through a rough period of results and form. And I'm not suggesting it's going to happen on Friday night, but it could well do. Selhurst Park on a Friday night after you've played on a Monday is potential for one of those hiccups, really. And I think a Crystal Palace team without Eze, without Elise, you could say, well, Palace are weakened. This is a great opportunity for Spurs to extend that streak. But I actually think that the opposite may be true, in the fact that Palace have relied on defensive stability and organisation and resilience as the foundation for their sort of strengths in the past couple of seasons. It's something they're very, very familiar with, and I just think they might revert to type in this sort of situation. They've kept 3 clean sheets on the spin before that trip to Newcastle, where everything that could go wrong did go wrong for Palace, and Roy Hodgson was very quick to kind of brush that performance aside as quick as possible by saying it was very unlike us. And Tyreek Mitchell got overwhelmed down the left. Guehi made an uncharacteristic error. The central midfield area was overrun and overpowered and very sloppy. So Doucouré and Jefferson Lerma, normally so solid and strong in terms of a base in front of the back 4, they had a major off day at Newcastle. So I think Palace will look and try to sort of double down basically on Friday night. They'll be very focused on improving those defensive performances, very mindful that they're missing the crown jewels, if you like, in forward areas. So they have to try and keep this tight to be competitive. So I just think those key absentees could lead us much closer towards a lower scoring game than perhaps the market suggests. So I would follow Adrian's school of thought here and backing under 2.5 goals at 2.16. When you consider only Everton have failed to score more often than Palace this season, they fired 4 blanks in 9 Premier League games so far, notching to 7 goals, Crystal Palace. However, flip it round, no side's managed more clean sheets than Crystal Palace this season. They've got 4 already, and 3 of their 4 matches at Selhurst Park have produced a maximum of 1 goal, let alone 2 or 3. And for all the positivity around Spurs, they have also been keeping clean sheets, 4 and 9 as well. 4 and 9 have gone under 2.5 goals, and there was this trend of Spurs scoring twice in almost every game. I think they've done it all bar once so far this season. But interestingly enough, 6 of their 9 fixtures have featured no more than 3 strikes. So they're not too far off featuring a few more under fixtures than they have so far already. So I think both sides have been relatively impressive at the back. Obviously, Tottenham have much more sparkle in forward areas, and they're much more likely to win that game. But that's reflected in the price here at odds-on quotes away at Selhurst Park, which always makes me feel a little bit uneasy on a night fixture. So happy to sort of leave the match odds and the handicap alone and focus on the goals and opposed goals.
Okay, under 2.5 for both the guys. We're going to lock that in, obviously, at 2.16. The guys and alluded to Crystal Palace defence a lot, but as Mark touched on at the end, Tottenham's defence has been very solid this season and very exciting young defence. So interesting to see how that copes with the Selhurst atmosphere. Under 2.5 goals, 2.16 currently at the time of recording. We're going to the second game here, and this is a good opportunity to cover these two sides in depth in the main window. It's Bournemouth versus Burnley, Saturday, 3 o'clock. Bournemouth 2.22 favourites, Burnley 3.5. That's 5-2 in fractional terms. The draw is 3.75. Both teams to score, yes, 1.69. Asian handicap sees Bournemouth get a quarter of a goal head start above even money, and over 2.5 is 187. So, Mark, safe to say I didn't envy either of your tasks in terms of picking bet here. And I don't know if you got that impression, but when we picked the game, I had no issue covering it, because these are two teams we want to talk about, but I have no idea what's going to happen.
It's a massive match, isn't it? I wouldn't say I'm super confident, but I'm relatively pleased with my selection on this game, which is over 2.5 goals at 188 or 187. Just feels like a big price for a Premier League fixture in terms of just blanket odds for a game, really. And if you look at both teams to score at 169, I think the increase then to over 2.5 goals at 187 is quite significant, really. And look, it's a huge game for both teams. Both will feel that they have to get a result here. I feel like it's kind of getting to crunch time for Andoni Iraola, a very good coach. I was very hopeful about. I still think he can turn the tide at Bournemouth, but it's been tough going. I think the sea change in approach from Gary O'Neill is obviously taking a lot of time to bed in. They weren't sort of used to any kind of pressing last year. This time around, he wants them to be very aggressive, play with high energy, with and without possession. So there's clearly going to be teething problems. The schedule's been very tough too. They faced 6 of the current top half, and the only opponent in the bottom 5 was Everton. The issue being those games against Everton and Wolves recently, they've been pretty dreadful, really. And then injuries have been biting throughout the campaign. So they obviously lost Jefferson Lerma in the summer. Then the 2 big midfield signings, Alex Scott and Tyler Adams, have barely been fit. So they've looked really soft in central areas. But all that, they have been falling short. And he is fighting for his job at the minute. He believes individual mistakes and lapses in discipline are what's costing his team. You can tie that in as well with their inability to hold on to positive positions. They've dropped more points than any other side from winning positions in the Premier League this season, 11 points, which is significant, really. And, for me, I'd rather be with the goals than back either side because both teams are just leaking goals for fun at the minute. It is a massive match for both, obviously. Bournemouth conceded 8 goals in their first 5 league games, and that included matches against Liverpool, Spurs and Chelsea when they were supposed to be kind of settling in. Well, the last 4 fixtures, they've leaked 12 goals and they've allowed 45 shots against Everton and Wolves. So they're gettable, which should encourage Burnley, who haven't been firing off too many. They've had fewer shots on target than all bar Luton. They've also got the second lowest expected goals tally. But they've had it tough too. If you look at their schedule, they've played 6 of the current top half. But they just look to be getting a little bit found out. Vincent Kompany seems kind of reluctant to alter his approach at the minute. They're playing out from the back, looking to dominate the ball. They just don't have the technical quality to deal with pressing sides. And that would kind of encourage Bournemouth, I'd say. Last week against Brentford, they had more possession than their opponents, but they're outshot 23-6. They had 11 touches in the Brentford box compared to 53 from Brentford, despite having more possession than the Bees. So they're allowing over 16 shots per game. They've got the second worst defensive record in the division. Their summer signings, the bulk of them haven't really stepped up consistently either. So ultimately, I've got basically down here 2 poor defensive teams, 2 desperate teams. And I think, bad defenses often breathe goals as much as, quality attacks. And that's my theory here. The 2 teams have managed just 1 clean sheet between them. 12 of their 18 combined games have gone over. And considering what's at stake, I think the price of 87, was it, on over 2.5 goals, is just a little bit too big to turn down, really. I don't really care who wins, what the outcome is. I just think it's going to be goal heavy.
Well, someone who wants that stress is Adrian Clarke. Adrian, 1 win, 4 draws, and 13 defeats from 18 games for both these sides.
Yeah.
You've tried to be pro Burnley a couple of times, and I thought you had them in a good spot at home to Chelsea in your long shot section. I watched that game. Thought they were decent for about 20, 30 minutes. Chelsea get the goal, and it all collapsed. Has that been the story of the season?
Yeah, bits and pieces that they've looked okay, but they've looked too fragile, haven't they? I've got to say, I think Mark makes a really strong case there for goals. Neither team is confident defensively. 1 clean sheet from a combined 18 games it tells its own story, doesn't it? The only sort of asterisk I put against that is because of the pressure of the game. Will it be a bit cagier? We'll have to wait and see. I suspect Mark might be right. I prefer to lean to one team, and I'm going to go with Burnley again, on the basis that they won at Luton. They probably should have won at Nottingham Forest. That was a game I worked on. They were well worth their point there. These are the 2 best gauges ahead of this fixture against teams that are struggling away from home, and they were very, very competitive. And I've seen Bournemouth a couple of times, and they've been really bad. Just nothing there really, apart from Dominic Solanke. They've been very, very reliant on him. I just think when a team wants to press, but they press badly, it leaves you so exposed. And even though I take Mark's point that Burnley haven't handled the press very well this year, that they do have technically good players that can play through teams. And it might only need, a couple of occasions for them to go and make them pay. I'm kind of annoyed with Vincent Kompany because he's ripped up a brilliant Championship team. He's barely playing any of the guys that got him promoted. He's brought in a load of new faces, and they don't look better to me than the players that got them up. Someone like Zaruri, for example, was amazing in the Championship, scored some great goals, but can barely get a look in. So Burnley fans must be really, really frustrated with their manager at the moment. I'm just going to go with Burnley on the basis of those Luton and Forest games, and the fact that Bournemouth have been so bad. They're still chasing their first win, of course, and there are strong whispers in the game that Iraola is toast, that he's gone, and that there might not be any turning back here, and that this defeat in this game might signal the end. But even if he gets through this one, that maybe they're already sounding out possible replacements. So and you look, if that filters through to the dressing room, that's a problem ahead of this game as well. Are they going to really, really fight hard for this manager? I just think in a 6-pointer like this, Vincent Kompany, someone established, someone very secure in his job, I would imagine, has the backing of the players. I think that there might be a little bit more fight from Burnley than from Bournemouth. We'll have to wait and see, but that's my feeling ahead of the game. So I want to go with Burnley on the handicap, plus 1/4 of a goal, just the good side of evens, and which means that Bournemouth, for the bet to lose, for us to not make money, Bournemouth have to win the game, and they've not won a Premier League game so far this season. So I'm going to roll with that.
If Iraola gets the stay of execution beyond this weekend, it's Man City away and then Newcastle at home. So good luck.
It's amazing he hasn't already, which I would suggest, Adrian, not to spend too long on this, that his job is relatively safe. I have heard a few rumors as well, but not to that extent. But you've heard a few things.
They went all in on him. So the owners would be very, very reticent. Because it was a controversial appointment, because everyone liked Gary O'Neill. No one was complaining about Gary O'Neill. They just went all out to say, from a position of relative strength, we're going to strengthen and just get a better manager. It was a risk, and it won't be easy for them to pull the plug. But 10 games in without a win, if they don't win this weekend, that is panic stations for me. And I don't see how they can sort of let it roll on.
I would suggest they're going to stick with him, just because, like you said, Adrian, where do they go from? Hadden, Gary O'Neill, Iraola, where does it go? But massive game nonetheless. I am going to lean Mark over 2.5 goals. I do take your point, Adrian. Could potentially be cagey, but the defenses ultimately are leaning us in that direction. But Burnley plus 1/4 of a goal. If you want half your stake on drawing a bet and the other half on double chance, that's over even money. at 2.04. And we'll go to Wolves versus Newcastle. Ties us in beautifully to Gary O'Neill. Adrian, I'll come to you first. Quick look at the betting. We have a lot to talk about here. Wolves 4.5, Newcastle 186. The draw is 4.1. Both teams to score is 179. Yes, the Asian handicap line sees Wolves get a 3/4 of a goal head start. That's 187 currently on the matchbook betting exchange. 2.5 the total, and 183 is the over. So, Adrian, I know you only caught bits and pieces with Gary O'Neill. I'm hopeful that it sets a precedent. We had Thomas Frank a couple of weeks ago on M&F really talking openly about his tactics. They went out and obviously lost 3-1 to Everton that weekend. So maybe there is an M&F curse and we might try and get ahead of it. But your thoughts on Gary O'Neill coming in and destroying his, telling everyone in the whole Premier League how to beat Bournemouth if they didn't need that help already, given that
I loved
they'd be doing it.
I loved it because, I mean, it was almost like, it was like a, I don't know. It was a sort of very, very pat myself on the back kind of feature, wasn't it? But I love it because he's a manager scorned. You know, he's someone that didn't deserve to lose his job and did. And I would imagine he would have rocked up at the Sky Sports studio, Gary O'Neill, and said, they'd have said, any ideas, stuff you want to talk about? Actually, yeah, I've come up with an idea, and here's my presentation.
I could see him going. I could see him going. I have this training on creepy. Only if you want it. Only if you want it. And the guy's like, exactly. Oh, yeah, we'll take it. Yeah.
There's no way that it was them. It was Sky that suggested this. I'm pretty sure that Gary would have brought this to the table. And why shouldn't he? Why shouldn't he? And he would have taken great delight, I think, in it. But he's very good. You know, I used to ghostwrite for him back in the day, believe it or not, when players used to have their own websites. He was a young, promising player at Pompey, so I got to know him quite well. Really like him, and he is passionate about football. That really shines through, and he knows what he's talking about. I rate him as a manager, Gary O'Neill.
Well, just on that, Adrian, it feels like maybe me and it's just a general football fan, but when I heard Gary O'Neill within a minute, I'm like, okay, this guy is a lot better than I've given him credit for. So I think for Gary O'Neill, it was 100% the right thing to do. Wolves fan are a bit hit and miss. Some of them, like me, have gone, geez, I didn't realize the in-depth tactics he has. But also some Wolves fans are going, why is it our club that's suddenly showing off and trying to be, trying to lead this way on the M&F, you know?
Yeah, I get that. But look, we'll have to wait and see. I just think I think if he wasn't a manager, he'd be in the broadcasting game. Gary O'Neill, he's just that way inclined, and any team that he manages might have to get used to that. Really, I just think he's happy to talk about things. He's quite open, and he is tactically astute. So yeah, look, if we're looking ahead to this game, obviously there's a little black mark against Newcastle after their performance against Dortmund. A couple of injuries in there as well, not least Isak. So that's a potential problem for them. Obviously, they've got Callum Wilson, so it's not a disaster. But yeah, it was a confidence knocking performance because Dortmund absolutely deserved to win that game. They created a lot of chances, and that will give Wolves encouragement. And if they had any fears about facing the Magpies, they might be just calmed having seen that game. Wolves are miles more attractive and attacking, I think, under Gary O'Neill, which is great. Just written a piece on Pedro Neto, actually, for the Premier League. And, I mean, looking a bit more in depth at his performances, I mean, blimey. Whew.
Great player. What a player, isn't he?
Yeah. I don't think there's a more explosive winger in the Premier League at the moment than Pedro Neto. You know, the last 4 goal contributions that he's produced, 3 assists and a goal, have all come on the back of unbelievable dribbles. You know, exploiting his pace and quality, and he's up against Dan Burn in this game, and you know it's a mismatch in speed. Pedro Neto is the second fastest player in the Premier League. Dan Burn isn't, so that'll be a really interesting duel. Actually, Dan Burn's a good player, so I'm not saying he can't handle Neto, but pace-wise, that could be a problem. I'm looking at goals here. Both teams to score has landed in 7 of 9 for both teams. Wolves have scored in 8 of 9. Newcastle have scored in 8 of 9. So both teams are used to getting on the score sheet. The reason I've got confidence that Wolves can score is because they've scored in all 4 matches at Molineux, and they've all been the top 7 teams. They've had a really hard start to the campaign, Wolves, in terms of the fixture list at Molineux, but they've scored in all of them. They've threatened in all of them, which is very un-Wolves like. So he's made that impact. Here's a stat for you as well. This fixture just spawns both teams to score. 15 of the last 16 Premier League meets between Wolves and Newcastle has seen both teams to score land. And I know that has zero relevance on this fixture, but it's a stat that tells you that you get a lot of draws in this fixture. You get a lot of 1-allers. And it wouldn't surprise me at all if we saw something similar here. Newcastle have a great attack, the best actually in the Premier League in terms of goals scored. And they create tons of chances. But as we saw against Dortmund, they are get-attable. And there are obviously issues there with Tonali and a few injuries. So with Botman out. So I think that the Wolves can absolutely score here as well. So, yeah, I'm quite confident about this. It's not the biggest price, but I do think that both teams will score.
Okay, both teams to score currently 179. Mark, I'll give you a chance to speak a little bit about Gary O'Neill. And I don't know if you got a chance to watch all of it on Monday Night Football. But again, overall, I thought it was a really good insight. And again, as I said to Adrian, the layman, I guess I didn't appreciate maybe the amount of stuff that's going into this on a daily basis. And Gary O'Neill did come across as known as his onions when it came to tactics.
Yeah, it's quite impressive, really. I guess for the novice like myself, or I'm not going to put you down in the same category as I, but
no, I'm there, Mark.
Sort of very, very sort of weak on the tactical side of the game. So it's always massively insightful when someone in a position of power can come out and sort of share their views and how they've worked things out. And I think it's quite fascinating to get that kind of insight and the principles that kind of are at stake and how they applied those in the victory against Bournemouth, which was a come from behind win. Of course, I think a red card did help Wolves in that situation, but I also thought the impact of Tommy Doyle off the bench in the second half and his progressive passing was made a massive difference to Wolves going forward as well. So I'd be interested to see if Gary O'Neill gives him an opportunity from the off here, because I do think they have got the tools to trouble Newcastle. As Adrian said, I've actually got the same selection marked down here because I think the price is tremendous, actually. Adrian sort of touched on Wolves' record at Molineux. They've approached all those matches with real aggression. They've gone for teams from the off, really. Flew out of the traps against Liverpool. Should have been much more than 1-0 ahead at half-time before succumbing in the second half. Turned over City, of course. Held Villa and were better than the score suggested when they hosted Brighton as well. So they've had that free midweek off. Gary O'Neill will obviously have them on the training paddock, probably looking to hurt Newcastle and find weaknesses in the Newcastle side. And, the Magpies will have gone all in on Wednesday night's Champions League tie against Dortmund. And I think the Wednesday to Saturday turnaround is quite quick and is a negative for sure against Newcastle here. I wouldn't be touching them at 1.86. It's not a price of appeal whatsoever. They were held here last season. And Newcastle have only actually won 9 of the last 23 away Premier League games going back to the start of last season. So, if they are at their best, they can be very formidable. They've already won 3 Premier League games by a margin of 4 goals or more this season. They're the top goal scorers. They lead the expected goals charts. They've had the most shots on target in the penalty area, the top of big chances created, as well as conversion rate. They have been clinical, efficient, and very impressive in terms of creating chances. However, there is that kind of opportunity for Wolves to hurt them, as Dortmund did in midweek. And I just think that BTTS price is a little bit too big to go unbacked. Wolves have scored in 7 of 9 overall. They've only managed 1 clean sheet, though. So you've got 7 winning both teams to score selections from 9 Premier League games already this season. And Newcastle themselves have seen BTTS land in 61% of away days going back to the start of last season too. So they're not consistent at keeping clean sheets away from St. James's. Chuck in the Botman injury, Tonali's incoming suspension, and just the general fatigue around the place after what was an underwhelming display midweek. I think there's an opportunity here for Wolves, but I think the BTTS option is the better bet.
Okay, agreement with the guys. 179, both teams to score. Yes, Wolves versus Newcastle. That's a Saturday, 5:30 kickoff. Now there's a host of games on Sunday from 2 o'clock, 1 o'clock. One game that's been brought forward at 3:30, which I can't really figure out the reason. Potentially to do with American TV audience and international TV audience. Manchester United versus Manchester City. 3:30 Sunday. No, what is it, Mark?
It's the clock's going back, Dan.
It's not. This game will actually start at 3:30, Mark. Believe it or not.
Really?
Mark, I've had this conversation. I was your side of the fence. The early kickoff. I swear to God. Mark will look this up as I start chatting nonsense here, but it's 1 o'clock, the early kickoff. 3:30 Manchester United, Man City. For what it's worth, it's an 8 out of 10, 8.1 out of 10 Super Sunday. But we'll take a look at the betting as we get at matchbook.com. The over-end we currently have on the match odds, as you can see on screen, 100.07%. You won't get better out there on any exchanges, let alone the sports books. So if you are betting singles, well worth checking out. Manchester United 5.7, Man City 172. The draw is 4.1. Both teams to score, yes, is 176. The Asian handicap line sees United get a 3/4 of a goal head start at 2.04, and the total is 2.5 shaded towards the over at 177. So, Mark, yeah, your takeaways on this new kickoff time for 1 week only at 3:30, and secondly, where are you looking for a bet for the Manchester derby on Sunday?
Stand corrected. Apologies.
No, Mark. Do you know how I know this for definite? I went. No, the clocks go back to someone and got looked very silly as well. So it's I'm guessing there's no reason given, no reason, police or anything like that. I'm suggesting, thinking out loud, it might be to do with the international TV audience, because American clocks and other clocks don't go back or forward this weekend. There you
go. Anyway,
strange
about football betting.
I've just looked it up, and there is no reason. Yeah, apparently the start time was agreed following consultation between the clubs, the broadcaster, and the local authorities. I suspect it's broadcast reasons, but yeah. They haven't said so.
I don't think it would go down well if they mentioned international TV audiences. That would be my suggestion. But we will digress as the comments figure it out first.
I guess if you're a results man, you would be speaking positively about Manchester United getting back to winning ways. Yeah. I think anyone who's seen just glimpses of their matches against Brentford, Sheffield United and FC Copenhagen can tell you this Manchester United team are still a million miles away from the side we expect them to be at this stage of the season. In fact, I think it's incredibly hard to see how they've managed to pull off those 3 wins in succession. The very, very, very late show against Brentford, against Sheffield United, they needed that superb Dalot goal when they were very unconvincing for the most part. And against Copenhagen in midweek, just dreadful, really. You need a combination of a Harry Maguire header and a Nana penalty save to kind of contribute to that victory. But across the 90, I thought United were second best against FC Copenhagen at Old Trafford. It's not good. For long periods, United were poor. There was no obvious style or pattern of play. And for me, that's incredibly alarming and quite a concern for Erik ten Hag. Of course, you can expect or should expect United to raise and rally themselves really for a derby fixture at home to Manchester City. They won this match last season from behind, but they were in a much, much better place going into that game at Old Trafford. Right now, they just look fragile, they look directionless, and they look like they need a huge improvement to be able to compete with a side like Man City, who have won 7 of their last 12 league trips to Old Trafford. They're understandable odds-on favourites, and that tends to be the way these days when Man City go to Man United. I'm not really interested in the quotes on them to win the game at the 173-ish price. It's a little bit skinny, so you've got to sort of engineer something a little bit different. So I've included under 4.5 goals to boost that price on City to 2.16. That looks much more palatable. The reason being, City haven't been the kind of all-conquering, swashbuckling team, the free-scoring kind of entertainers of previous years. And in the majority of their matches this season, they have been quite, I don't want to say underwhelming, but kind of lacking the same sort of verve that made kind of neutrals like myself enjoy watching them. There appears to have been a bit of a shift in approach from Pep and from City to kind of focus a little bit more on control and strangling sides than previous years. And I think you can see that in the numbers, actually. After 9 Premier League games, City have scored 19 goals. That's 10 goals shy of the same tally they accumulated last season. And if you strip out penalties, they've generated just 1.6 expected goals per game. Now, 7 sides have produced a better MPXG figure than Man City this season. That includes Brentford and Everton. So, I mean, interestingly, they've only actually scored 7 goals after the hour mark, which is fewer than Liverpool, Newcastle, Villa, Arsenal, Brighton. And I think that's largely down to this approach and trying to establish a lead, sit on it, rather than kind of going for the jugular for 90 minutes. They just look a bit more kind of cold and calculated, controlled, and functional at times. And look, their defensive metrics are as good as ever, miles clear of the rest of the league. They're conceding just 6.78 shots per game, which is 3 whole shots better than the next best. The league average is around 13.5, and they're obviously understandably leading the way in terms of expected goals and shots on target conceded, in terms of the numbers being very, very impressive. So it's kind of surprising that they have only managed 3 clean sheets in the Premier League this season. But anyway, what it tells me, the eye test as well as the data, that City will attempt to strangle United in this game. The first goal is obviously key, but I think if City do get it, they should be capable of seeing this match out relatively comfortably, as much as it can be in a derby game. So I think City to win under 4.5 goals at 2.16 would be my preferred play here. You've got the range of correct scores on your side, the 1-0, 2-0, 3-0, 4-0, 2-1 and 3-1. I would be surprised if this match did escalate into a shootout.
Okay, City under 4.5, as Mark says, 2.16. Adrian, if you wanted to take positives from Wednesday night's game, it was definitely a moment. Onana saving that Old Trafford erupting. Very rare goalkeeper gets that moment. There may be signs of improvement to come. When you've probably been in teams that have struggled for form. Does it take a win like that where you haven't played well, but dig it out like a last minute action that maybe triggers you into a bit of form?
Yeah, but all of their wins have been when they haven't really
like that. Yeah.
well.
There's only so much you get. Yeah.
So yeah, Onana made a good save in the game as well, actually. So it was a good night for him. I just can't see anything other than a Manchester City win here. I think that they've lost their last 2 away games at Wolves, at Arsenal. I can't see any scenario where they don't right that at Old Trafford. I just back up everything that Mark said. That they're really not playing very well at all. Manchester United. The defense isn't great. I know that obviously they kept a clean sheet the other night, but the names on the team sheet. I just think that City with Doku and Foden or Grealish, whoever they go with, Alvarez in behind Haaland. I think they are capable of running amok. The Man United dressing room is a problem. It's a bad dressing room. Bruno Fernandes has never, ever been a captain. And I think that Ten Hag is struggling to get a grip on the dressing room. You know, that it's not happy camp, is it? I don't think anyone would argue against that. I just think sometimes a tough match like this can see things unravel. And if things aren't right behind the scenes, a team like City can absolutely expose them. And, Galatasaray scored 3 here. Most teams that have gone to Old Trafford have carved out stacks of chances this season. Remember what Brighton did to them. They played with them, really. And I can see City enjoying themselves. I can. Højlund, I think, gives United a slightly different dimension, because if you can get at City, it's those quick counters where he can run in behind, or Rashford as well. They can be done on the counter, Manchester City, but that's the only tactical positive I can give United ahead of this game. I think it's going to be all City, and that they'll win quite comfortably. I would happily take on Mark's pick there with under 4.5, but there's just a poor part of me that thinks they could finally just go a little bit goal crazy, and things could unravel. That's my fear. So I'm going to go with over 1.5, 1-0, just taking the 1-0 win out of the equation. And that's 2.04. So yeah, it's just a different way of looking at it.
When you say that, I think it's 2 years since the Liverpool 5-0 game. The way you were talking, Adrian, felt like that just for them brief as a moment. We'll play it safe in the match with Pod and go with Mark's selection, City to win and under 4.5 goals. Bigger price too, 2.16. But Adrian's given a good case for City and over 1.5. So that's the Super Sunday game. And Wolves Newcastle, we've gone for both teams to score collectively 179, under 2.5 in Palace. Spurs collectively, I've selected over 2.5 goals for Burnley at 186. We'll go to our EFL section, and Mark had an absolute slam dunk pick here, but unfortunately Adrian stole it for his best bet. Mark decided to step away. So Adrian, it's all you for the EFL. So take
He's
away.
A man of honor, isn't
he?
Yeah, Mark O'Haire, what a gentleman he is. He's just stepped aside for me. Yeah, I love it. Got a couple. Into League One, Charlton versus Bolton. Good game, actually. Two decent teams. Michael Appleton is starting to get a tune out of Charlton Athletic, and Bolton, for me, I did back them to win the title, and I'm not going to change my mind, even though Pompey are looking really, really good. I think that Bolton are a decent team. Over 2.5 goals is my pick. It's not a big price, but that is for a reason. In 26 combined matches, so 13 fixtures each, 19 have gone over 2.5. That's first and third in the division for overs, and for Bolton games, it's 77% of their matches have seen over 2.5 goals. Both teams to scorers landed in 69% of each of their matches. That's 18 out of 26. And Charlton at home are pretty entertaining, actually. They've scored 17 times in their last 6 home matches. They've got some really good attackers. Alfie May, you might have heard of. He did the business at Cheltenham. He's back in the goals now. Blackett Taylor out wide's a good player. You've got Miles Leeburn, son of Carl Leeburn from back in the day. He's good. Anike has come to the fore. So Charlton have goals in them. And Bolton are quite an open team. I've seen them in the flesh. They play a lovely brand of football. They really do. But they don't worry too much about defending. So they'll go and play their game, but leave gaps for Charlton. So I think this could be a really fun, exciting match between two relatively free scoring sides. That's why over 2.5 is 1.71. But I do think it's going to land.
Okay, and the second one is we talk about this every week, League Two. I don't think it shows any signs of slowing down in terms of the top of the table. It's a fun thing to look at 5 o'clock where all the teams land, and one of those teams is Stockport up against a team near the bottom in Tranmere. So there seems to be, just looking at the table alone, Adrian, a good bit of value in this pick.
Well, yeah, I think so. I mean, Stockport are the form team. They had a dodgy start, but they've taken, they're just on fire. 9 straight wins for Stockport, so they're top of the table. Louis Barry, on loan from Villa, is in brilliant form. Ole Afe, the striker, really quick. Will Collar's a good player for Stockport. They've got a lot of talent, and they've scored in 14 of their 15 games so far. And they've taken 17 points from 8 home games. This is after an indifferent start. So Tranmere are right up against it. Tranmere are hovering just above the relegation zone. They got Mr. Positive in charge, Nigel Atkins, but it hasn't really brought about a massive upturn. They've lost all 7 away from home this season. So on the road, just rubbish. Tranmere, they've scored 4, let in 15. I just don't give them much hope away to Stockport, for all of those reasons. I'm going to pair it with over 2.5 because for obvious reasons, Stockport are super sure. I think they're 1.29 shots to win this game. That's how confident the market is that we're going to see a home win. Well, if you think there's going to be 3 or more goals, then it becomes backable, which is why I've picked it. And, I think that over 2.5 has landed in 60% of both teams' games. So it's more likely to happen than not. And I just feel it's a match where Tranmere could be rabbits in the headlights. 8 of the last 11, by the way, for Stockport, since they've gone on this run, have landed over 2.5 goals. So, yeah, they're cutting loose a little bit. And I think they'll view this as a match they can win. And win handsomely. So yeah, Stockport and over 2.5 for me.
1.91 Stockport and over 2.5 goals. Charlton Bolton over 2.5 goals, 171. We've got a comment in here saying Leicester win to nil. Got to be part of the EFL section.
Oh,
QPR might be the worst team in the Football League. Confident wise, we have to be. Everyone just relax in the YouTube comments. We will get there eventually. Before we move on, Adrian, I went down a Nigel Atkins rabbit hole there when you were speaking. Some of these clubs he's been at since Southampton, I barely remember him managing.
Yeah, but he's got an okay record, actually, Nigel Atkins. He's not a terrible manager. Things very rarely go awfully. But yeah, he was basically the sort of director of football, and they sacked the coach earlier on in the season, and he took the gig. But he is a Tranmere fan. It's his club. And I love Nigel Atkins. He is, if you follow him on social media, I mean, he's always out for a walk, telling you to smile and enjoy the day. And he's Mr. Motivator. So I'm not going to hear bad words said against Nige, even though he can be a little bit partridge at times. But yeah, I just think he hasn't got a very good Tranmere team. The name is strong at League 2 level.
Yeah,
they're normally powerful, but this year it's a weak Tranmere overside.
Yeah, Reading, Sheffield United, Hull, Charlton, and now interim manager with Tranmere Rovers. I always thought he did a great job and set that team up well for Poch, if memory serves me correctly. Mark, 5th versus 4th in Norway. We've had 25 games. The season's nearly over for people listening and don't really bet usually in the Norwegian league. But you think you've unearthed a really decent bet here at a backable price and lead into your long shot then as well.
Yeah. Mulder are taking on Tromsø, as you say, just 5 games left of the Eliteserien season, I should say. Mulder were the defending champions. They have surrendered their title. The last season, they won the league by 18 points, but they've never really recovered from a really horrendous start to to this year's campaign. They did find kind of form between May and October. They're always up against it, really. And the last 2 weekends have certainly not gone their way. They lost at home to Bodo, who are now likely to reclaim their crown. And then they lost at Brann last weekend in a humdinger, really. It's dropped them to 5th in the table. They're now 7 points shy of their visitors, Tromsø, in 4th. Tromsø really sort of battling it out for the final European qualification place. So this is a big game for them. They're a team who've performed way above pre-season expectations, but they haven't fallen away, which is what people were expecting to see. And in fact, last weekend, they won a really dramatic match at Viking, effectively ending Viking's own title hopes. They've already won away at Bodo Glimt as well. They have the second best away record in the division. They've also got the best defensive record in the division. They're just a very, very tough nut to crack. They tend to relish matches where they play teams who attack them. Teams have trouble breaking them down because they've got this deep line defense, and they play on the counter-attack and in transitions themselves, which makes them really menacing in those matches where they concede possession. Follow kind of similar principles to say a Brentford in the Premier League, really. Very organised, very difficult to penetrate out of possession, but utilise set pieces and counter-attacks. They've only lost 6 games all season, and just one of those defeats came by a margin of 2 goals or more. So yeah, Molde lost the reverse game in Tromsø, and they're coming into this weekend in a bit of a low ebb domestically, following the kind of premature ending to their title defence. And they're also involved in Europa Conference League exploits on Thursday night, and that will have taken their full focus this midweek, especially considering it's a game against Swedish opposition. So they'll be putting everything they've got into that fixture, and probably looking to just get by against Tromsø at the weekend, where a bit of fatigue and perhaps a lack of focus may play their part here. So Molde, to me, just looked far too short considering the circumstances. Tromsø, for the long shot, are a 5-1 shout, 6.0. But for my bet in this segment, I will give Tromsø +1 on the Asian handicap at 195. It means we only lose our stake if Molde win this match by 2 goals or more. And as I say, that's happened just once against Tromsø all season.
Tromsø 6.0, as Mark alluded to, currently on the match with Bet and Exchange, or play them on the Asian handicap with a 1-goal head start at 195. We will go to you, Adrian, for this one. And this Cheltenham are just the team that keep on scoring. They've scored in their last 3 league games. I mean, there is no issue here. So talk to us a bit about why you're actually going to bring them into your best long shot.
I just thought it's a bit of it's an opportunity to get Cheltenham on side after we've
get ahead of the game, Adrian. Get ahead of it.
Exactly. I backed, obviously, on last week's podcast. I had Wolves +1/4 to win at Bournemouth, so that was a sweet one. And it went. You know, a lot of my thinking there was on he is not going to get beat there, and he was never going to get beat there. And Daniel Clarke was sacked by Port Vale. He took them up. He's a very, very popular figure there, and he's not happy, I don't think, about the circumstances. He's rocked up at Cheltenham, and there's a little bit of a new manager bounce going on. You know, they're not a great side, but he's definitely lifted them. They drew 1-1 with Derby. They beat Cambridge 1-0. They only lost 3-2 to Blackpool away from home in midweek. So he's getting them to score goals. He's getting some belief back in that side, and he is going to be fiercely determined not to be beaten at Port Vale and to take all 3 points. So I'm liking the look of them maybe to win 2-0, and I'll tell you why. Because Port Vale can't score. They haven't scored in their last 5 games. 5 of their 6 games at home have ended 1-0 this season. So it's not a stretch to think that both teams to score will land here. They've won 3, but lost 2 1-0, and their last 2 home games they've lost 1-0. So yeah, I think it's going to be attritional. It's not going to be a pretty game, but it wouldn't surprise me if Cheltenham scored, because that's what they're doing now under Daniel Clarke, and Port Vale are really, really struggling. And I've played in teams that have had this issue, and you wonder where the next goal is going to come from. And Cheltenham, by the way, even when they were bad before Daniel Clarke came in, they kept things very tight against their immediate rivals at the bottom of the table. 6 matches they've had against bottom half teams, and they've been a total of 7 goals. So they are pretty good at keeping things cagey. They will aim for a clean sheet. look to nick one. So yeah, I'm going to go with it. It's a fun one to back Cheltenham, and there's a nice little narrative around it as well.
Love the narrative angle here, not gonna lie. 8.4 currently. Cheltenham and both teams to score no. Popular pick in the YouTube comments. We will go to best bets, guys. 14-4, the best bet records. Not bad. And Adrian, unfortunately, this has been the worst kept secret for the last 12 hours. It's just, there's been leaks left, right, and center. Nearly every listener and viewer knows this selection. So just make the case for everyone who's already backed it already. So there's no
I've
point.
got to give the people what they want, eh, Chris? you preempted it. I promise I haven't stolen that off you. I did plan this. Yeah, Leicester to beat QPR to 0 feels a great bet at 2.52.
Big price. Big price.
A big old price. Look, Leicester have won every away game. They are on fire at the moment. They've won, every game but one. 6 of their 14 matches, or 6 of their 13 wins have been to 0. They are going to control this game. Gareth Ainsworth isn't a possession coach, is he? Leicester are going to have the ball for a lot of this game, which means that QPR can't score if Leicester have the ball. So yeah, they're not going to have many efforts on goal. I can guarantee that. Queen's Park Rangers. They had one shot against West Bromwich Albion in midweek. Didn't have a shot on target. The one shot they had was blocks. They're a bad team at the moment, like a seriously bad team, Queen's Park Rangers. They've got a bit of talent there, but they've got no confidence, and the manager's got no tune out of them at all. The home record is abysmal, absolutely shocking. In the last 12 months, they've won once. They've taken 7 points from a possible 60 at home in the last 12 months. Queen's Park Rangers, they hate it at home, and they're playing the best team I can remember operating at the Championship. So yeah, on the back of 5 straight defeats, I just don't give QPR a prayer here. Leicester will surely win, and I think it's far more likely that they win to 0 than not. So yeah, as soon as I saw the price on this, I was like, bang, this has to be my best bet.
Yeah, it's hard to disagree. I think the only thing that gets to speed, Adrian, is the weight of Matchbook betting podcast listeners' money behind it. That's the only thing that can get a beat.
Mark pointed out to me earlier, there's a few fitness issues as well at QPR, Mark.
Yeah, Jimmy Dunn was sent off in midweek, so he'll be suspended. We've already got Morgan Fox out injured. Steve Cook is still 50-50 at best to be available for the weekend. And Jake Clark Salter, who is made of glass anyway, went off at half-time at the Hawthorns. So you're potentially missing 4 centre-halves. I'm not sure who else can come in and play there other than Osman Kakai or some of the younger lads from outside of the squad. So that's a massive concern at the minute. And, we're not just kind of sleepwalking to relegation. We're kind of full on sprinting to League One right now. It's very much sitting ducks, I think, this weekend. I agree with Adrian. I've never seen a team dominate this division as much as Leicester have across the first 13 matches. And Rangers, I'm a very objective QPR supporter. I believe there is the makings of a championship side, a championship squad there. It's not a relegation squad. It is quite thin in places, but there is quality. Probably bottom 6, bottom 8 for sure, but it's nowhere near as bad as the results suggested. But it's just, I don't think I've ever seen a QPR side as bad as this. And, that's kind of saying something really, which is a real shame, because Gareth Ainsworth is a QPR hero of ours. To see things spiral out of control with him in charge is quite sad to see, really. So I don't know how this ends other than a kind of whitewashing Leicester win.
I didn't enjoy that last minute listening to Mark Adrian there. So it's quite depressing stuff. So Mark, my condolences for you and all QPR fans, and hopefully
you watch QPR 2, Leicester 0. You watch.
Yeah, no, it's set up for that minute 1 on Gillette Soccer Saturday, and of course QPR 1-0 up. That's how it works. Yeah.
It's got so bad it doesn't pain anymore. You're just expecting it, and if you're making money out of it, it probably kind of eases the blow a little bit.
Yeah, no. Listen, Mark, take it away with your best bet. You were beaten to the punch with Leicester. It is another Bundesliga, and you were brilliant last week, 3-0 on the Bundesliga selections from memory. Memory serves me correctly, and it's over 2.5 again, which is up in the 180s here.
Yeah. Hello, Augsburg, my old friends. Back to back overs in your game again. Probably getting a bit predictive now. 182 for overs. 74% of Bundesliga matches have gone over. If you turn that hit rate into implied odds, you get a 135 shot. Now, that's not the right way to price a football matchup, but it gives you an indication on the price available here, especially so considering this is a bet that's landed in 12 of 16 combined games between Augsburg and Wolfsburg this season. Augsburg doing the heavy lifting with 7 of 8 going over, but 11 of those 16 combined games have also seen BTTS. They started last week 2-0 down against Heidenheim, roared back and won that match 5-2 on the road in Jess Thorup's first game in charge. They'll be full of confidence, eager to kind of back it up at home, where they have been traditionally at their best. They've only failed to score 4 times in 21 home fixtures since the start of last season. The issue is defensively, they are wretched. They've conceded twice or more in 7 of their opening 8 games. They've only managed 5 home clean sheets since the start of last season, and their matches are averaging 4.25 goals per game. Yeah, we're getting overs at a 1.8 shot here. They're playing Wolfsburg, who traditionally are probably a little bit more kind of restrained as terms of a Bundesliga side under Niko Kovac. They're in poor form themselves with 4 defeats and 6, but all of those defeats came against kind of top 6 sides in the Bundesliga. This is very much more their level. They should be looking at this match as a very winnable opportunity. They've scored in 7 of 8 games. They've got Jonas Wind up front, who's already got 7 goals in the Bundesliga this season, but they have only managed 2 clean sheets of their own. So I think both teams oblige here, and I think 3 goals or more is well within range too. So just very surprised we're getting over 2.5 goals at a backable price. And there's another eye-catching Bundesliga over selection in my insights column too, which should be up on Thursday afternoon. I'd say
it will be indeed. So check that out. Mark O'Haire Matchbook Insights went 2-0 last week, 182 over 2.5 goals, and producer Ryan is now going to call you Mark O'Hairesburg, if that's correct. So there you go. Nice German slang to Mark's name. That's Mark O'Hairesburg. We won't leave that anywhere, but leave that in the podcast. But my thanks to Mark and Adrian. Another fun one, guys. Really enjoyed that. We'll be back same time Thursday to record, looking ahead to next week's weekend's action. There'll be a break from Champions League as we go to EFL Cup. Insights.matchbook.com, place to find a full recap of all the guys' picks. And if you are watching on the YouTube, hit that like button, subscribe completely for free. The best way to keep up to date with our content. Other than that, check out the Matchbook Betting Exchange this weekend if you're looking for a bet. Please gamble responsibly, and we'll chat to you next Thursday. Bye-bye.